I've been coming across the phrase starting over quite a lot on social media and in conversations within my circle and community recently. But to be quite honest, I don't like the phrase and much prefer to use the word pivot or even reset. And as I'll be sweating some serious and small stuff in September, I thought I'd share a few thoughts on why I don't like this phrase and how I actually do pivot on stuff. I'm the Forest Fairy. Welcome to my corner of the woods where I'm rebuilding, revamping, redesigning a magical life and hopefully inspire you to gather your own fairy dust. Hello everyone, I hope you're doing extremely well this week. These past few days have been quite challenging here in the Overberg as a really intense storm took out a few electricity pylons high in the mountains, leaving us without electricity for almost 2 days. Now, I know many of you may have experienced much worse, but it made me realize once again how blessed we are to have the luxury of electricity. I made the best of this enforced leave day by catching up on some home admin and a few friends. But the nights, cold, stormy and pitch black. Anyway, here I am after an unplanned adventure, and as you've heard, I don't like the phrase starting over. To me, it has a negative connotation, as if I failed or as if everything previously is null and void and I'm now starting from scratch. Yes, I know this is semantics and it may just be a very personal thing, but I'm reframing this concept to be less forceful and more positive. Because let's face it, when you do start over, it's not based on or with nothing. You have everything within you, all the experiences, the knowledge, and even the pain of whatever it is. So I'm going for the word pivoting. It brings to mind a ballerina doing a pirouette. And we know to perform the perfect pirouette, there's a lot of practice and pain behind it. Just like when I need to pivot on a serious life matter. And as in life, I sometimes don't need to do the whole pirouette. Just a quarter or a demi-pirouette is sufficient. So today I'll be chatting about pivoting, the serious and small stuff. Pivoting doesn't need to be perfect. And my 2 foundational pivoting steps. I've realized life consists of constant pivoting without us even registering it. And it's true, my life has been filled with all kinds of pivots. Some have been serious, like losing a partner before and to death, children leaving home, a job change, a retrenchment, losing a parent, and moving to the Overberg. And some have been small pivots that have kept me on my toes and out of the deadly comfort zone. Those are the everyday changes like ramping up my morning spiritual routine, developing a reading challenge for myself, and swapping the cushions in my lounge. Some are internal pivots and some external, and it's almost like you can plot them on a spectrum of 10 to 0. Now, this isn't scientific or based on anything but my own experiences. The 10 side of the spectrum could be some of the things I just mentioned, as well as things like life-threatening illnesses, a marriage, an empty nest, or a financial crisis. While the 0 side could include drinking more water, buying a houseplant, phoning a friend. Be aware where you plot something, because although the pivot could be something as simple as phone my mother, it could be a huge one if you need to phone her because you haven't spoken to her in years and you want to make amends. Such a small pivot could therefore actually have a monumental impact on your life. One of my more difficult and complex character traits that has in the past severely impacted on whether or how I pivot, and something that I've been working really hard on to ease up on over these past few years, is perfectionism. And yes, I now know that perfectionism is but the outward expression of things such as too high expectations, a fear of failure, lots of self-criticism, overthinking, seeking validation, and it's often accompanied by procrastination. In the past, this has led to suppressed low-level anxiety, long hours to ensure the best possible product is delivered, and worst of all, refusing to make any decision for fear it's not the best one. In other words, not pivoting when I needed to. And aside from how it impacted my work, it made everyday situations and decisions and pivots like choosing a new sofa, a paint color, a pullover knitting pattern, which of course not only had to be perfect, but also challenging, very difficult, to say the least. Then I'm not even talking about major decisions such as leaving a disheartening job or having a very intense conversation with my spouse. I would spend weeks researching, thinking, and wondering about what would be the best. And if the research results didn't meet all my critical requirements, I wouldn't even think of pivoting. So if it meant staying in a toxic work environment or continuing to wear the old baggy jeans because I couldn't find a pair that met my strict requirements, so be it. Then I made my first huge life pivot on a whim. Out of the blue, I decided to pack up my life in the northern part of the country and move to the Overberg. There were no weeks of weighing up and wandering. And here I met a wonderful woman who gave me one of the most profound yet simple aha moments of my life. She had come to the village intending to stay for the summer to recuperate from a series of events during and after COVID. When this stay expanded into a year and then 2, her attitude and response was, "But that suits me perfectly now. Tomorrow, next week, next month, I may feel differently, and that's okay." In other words, she was happy in her current circumstances, but aware that they weren't set in stone and that things could and are allowed to change. I now understand that pivoting is usually a continuous exercise as I grow and change. Nothing is set in stone. My decisions don't have to be perfect. I don't have to start over on a completely clean and clear slate. And it doesn't have to be all or nothing. I can make temporary decisions and pivot as much and as often as needed, and there's nothing negative about it. So my question to you is your overthinking, your fear of failure, your unrealistically high standards preventing you from pivoting, and so preventing you from redesigning a magical life for yourself? I have found that whether it's a huge life pivot or a small, simple pivot, there are 2 foundational steps I take. However, it was only when I decided on this conversation topic that I actually realized this and started formulating the steps for myself. So the first thing I notice is that before there's a pivot, there's some level of negative or positive emotion, some discomfort or dis-ease, either with myself or a thing or a situation. And again, these emotions and discomfort can be plotted on a feeling spectrum of 10 to 0. On the spectrum, 10 reflects strong feelings such as deep sadness or depression, incredible happiness, high excitement, being scared shitless, being violently angry, being batshit crazy. And the 0 reflects an almost take it or leave it attitude. It's not really important and it doesn't really warrant a pivot. But the important thing is that only we can decide for ourselves where something is reflected on the spectrum. Like, is it your whole life or just a segment, an abusive relationship, a health scare, an untidy house, the antsiness around your environment, the washing of dishes by hand? Hand washing dishes, as I've mentioned before, may be a 0 to you, but for me it's a 7. While my antsiness around my environment may only clock for a 3, yours could be at an 8. Once I'm clear on where something lies on the spectrum, I can then decide whether I need to pivot, whether I can pivot, and whether I want to pivot. I add the want to because you need to want to pivot, and pivoting takes a decision to be both brave and intentional. Brave to perhaps step out of your comfort zone or step away or towards something or someone, and intentional as it may require you to make plans and take action. This part of pivoting is deserving of its own conversation, as there are many habits and systems to assist us on pivoting successfully. However, getting this far, having the realization and making the decision feels like half the battle is already won. So there you have it. Now you know why I reframed starting over to pivoting, the things that stopped me from pivoting, and my foundational steps to pivoting. If you enjoyed this conversation, keep a lookout on what I intend to pivot this spring, or join me in the conversation how to wipe out fear, the 5 ways I use to do this. Wishing you a week filled with wonderful pivots and sprinklings of fairy dust. Until next time, goodbye